Oh, let's see if it grabs me over here. It's not letting me grab myself now. There we go. All right. Hello, everybody. We were talking and getting all excited for this event, and I saw, oh wow, it's 7 o'clock. We should actually get on. We should get on. Okay. Man, we've missed you guys. This has been a quarterly conversation. We missed last quarter. We were all crazy busy, had a million things going on, and we weren't able to do it. But we are back. We're excited for this conversation. And before I go any further, want to shout out our sponsors, Mayono, these guys right here. And I told them they need to give me a sign that I can put right there because you can barely see their logo here and here. But Mayono, it means vision in Swahili. They are our partners that give us all this wonderful gear. Guiding Brilliant Writers Publishing. That's Nick and Jai Galindo. Thank you, Nick. I know she's in the audience somewhere, or she'll be here at some point. HR Consultations, it's our fractional guys. And Do Better Consulting, this lady right down here in the corner that you might see. Desiree Goldie, we appreciate her and all the people that sponsor us throughout the year. I'm going to do some very quick intros. While I'm doing that, I'm going to put them up front so they can wave at you. First and foremost, this is in no particular order. Tiffany Castano, the CEO and founder of CEPHR, cultivating the evolution of professional HR. She's been a partner of ours at HR for You since early 2023. Excited for what we might do together in the future as well. Desiree Goldie, I just talked to you about Do Better Consulting. She's the owner and founder of Do Better Consulting, 20 plus years of executive HR and recruiting. She's also the co-host of the Talentless podcast with Ashley King, and she's the impact officer on our board of directors. And she's got a book coming out, folks. Leadership is a practice, not a personality. And you're doing that with Nick and Jai Galindo, aren't you?
I am.
Oh,
I am.
I'm excited.
Feel my favorite.
Dr. Anne-Marie Risto. Oh my goodness. She is absolutely amazing. The founder of Systematic Equity Edits. She's been a partner of ours since 2023. Brilliant lady. I was part of an early beta thing that she was doing, and I realized, man, I got to see my biases up close and personal when I thought I was doing so good. So it was a great exercise for me as well. And last but certainly not least, Kylie Van Leeuwen. She's the founder and CEO of Elevated Coaching and Consulting Global. She's a board president for HR for You Incorporated. She's part of other organizations as well, doing a lot of great work around psychological safety. And I am Chasen Forehand. Most of you know who I am, but I'm the founder of HR for You Incorporated. And we are honored to be here in this conversation. Leading from the front, turning back the clock, human rights then and now. I want to focus on two questions. How have we done since the 60s? And what do we have left to do? So really, what have we accomplished? I was born in the early 60s. How has that changed over time? And then what do we need to focus on in the future? So we're going to start with the first question, and we're going to interweave some of our personal stories and our experiences and the people that we've had in our life. And in no particular order, we always just kind of jump in and play off of each other. But I am going to start with Tiffany Castano. And the question is, what have we done in our past? And what does that look like?
Such powerful questions. I think it can be a complicated system, right? When we think about, oh, Jody, thank you. If you've not had, I'm sorry. No, I'm distracted by Jody's hugs. They're the best. If you ever get a chance to get a hug from Jody Forehand, do it. Your life will be changed. Truly. I think, but even to that, right? We've had this beautiful connectivity where, of course, that's not always the case, but across the years, we've seen people come together. We've seen different events be able to shape how we think about things. We've been able to support different workplace perspectives, right? Just even I think about our HR world and the profession has come so far in terms of making it. I'm wearing my people over everything tee today. Making things so that people feel seen, heard, valued, appreciated, celebrated. I've started adding because for so long, people who look like me, people in certain communities were not in a place where they feel like they could say something, right? We didn't have the space to say something. We didn't feel seen necessarily. And of course, some of the stuff goes on today. But when I think about even the evolution of work or the family unit and how much that has shifted in terms of just different generations in the workforce, the way that we maybe think about regulations and our earth. And I know that we're not making this political, but it is a human thing, right? Communities and how we support each other looks so much different today. And that's still evolving. I read something the other day. I can't remember if it was HBR. Do I still have it up? There's an article about a clock in Bolivia that runs counterclockwise. And it just was so timely for me to think about how we are in a space where things have moved forward. Sometimes they may feel like they've moved backwards, but that's change. And a lot of the work we do is change management, looking at how things have changed across the span of time. What are the cycles of life? What are the rhythms? Everything is a cycle and a rhythm. And so that really just caught my eye of just the significance and visually picturing something moving forward and then backwards. Sometimes it's 2 steps forwards. We might take steps back, but we're doing it together. And I think that's a beautiful thing that even COVID gave us. So I'll stop rambling now because now you got me started.
No, you're not rambling at all. I love that. Um, Desiree, I'm going to pick on you and bring you up. The same question. Obviously, I want to look at how have we done in our past?
Yeah.
Where have we been successful?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was just telling to my mother the other day, and I said I should have been born in the '60s. Like I would have been a cool, awesome person in the '60s. I probably would have been a Black Panther, or like riding in the street. I would have been so good, But I was born in '70s, so I didn't get that chance. I think what we did really well in those eras in that time period was speak up and really protest against the things that we were wrong. We did it in the streets and we did it very, very loudly. I think there were challenges, obviously, in that time that prevented us from doing it fully. But I think people really wanted to stand up for their rights during that time period. I feel like we've gotten quieter as time has gone on. And I believe, just like Tiffany, I believe there's a cycle that happens to these things, right? And we've seen a lot of protests happen, the No Kings protest. We've seen a lot of that come back up now, but we did really well at that piece of it and understanding what we were looking for. But we were so far behind in the '60s that it was so much work to be done that everything seemed like, a huge accomplishment because there wasn't really, I mean, look at the '50s, right? That's a crazy time, right? And so we jumped to the '60s and '70s where I think there was really important work done. And then we move on and we kind of dimmed ourselves down a little bit. We're like, oh, the '60s and '70s kind of handled everything and got everything done. And then those of us that carried the work through kind of the '80s and '90s, and for people that don't believe DEI existed before then, it has been around forever, and has carried that work through to where we are now. I just feel like it got quieter and then it gets louder. Like Tiffany said, it gets quieter, it gets louder. But I think we've done some great things in the past, and I don't think we reflect enough on that. As a people, as humans, to reflect on what we accomplished then and try to take something from that and move it to where we are now. I think we do a really bad job of that. My mom reminds me, if anybody wants to talk to her for a minute, she'll remind you of all the things she did, right?
Right.
But I don't think we all constantly are thinking about it.
Well, it's funny when I was pulling up kind of stats for each decades in the middle of the '60s, laws in the United States helped in legal racial segregation and strengthened protections against discrimination in public life. And in the 70s, it became about awareness of disability rights. So now we shifted some of that. So public, from education to employment to public spaces in people with disabilities. So again, that 60s and 70s. We're gonna shift now to Anne Risto, Dr. Anne Marie Risto, who is our stats person, always bringing the incredible stats. And same question, like how have we done in the past? And that's what we're focusing on first, is how have we done in our past?
So, it's interesting that you mentioned the 60s and 70s, because what came before that was the United Nations was founded, right? In the mid 45, I think it was around. And then not too long after that, there was that Declaration of Human Rights. And so then, like what Desiree was talking about, and what I'm so proud of from those times, was just the presence and the curiosity that we had these stellar human beings that upheld respect for humanity. And they didn't only speak it, they stood up on the soapboxes when they were not the popular choice or decision that was happening. And they really advocated for humanitarian rights. So I miss that. I wasn't alive when that was starting, but, I was born in the 70s also, Desiree. And it was that I didn't even realize until I became an educator myself that was when people with disabilities received some equitable rights. And I say some because we did better because we knew better. And I feel like as we're growing, and I know we're focusing on what we've done well, so I'll try to stay there, but as we're growing as a nation, we know better and we're not doing better. And so I go back to historically, we didn't always get it right and things were not perfect, but there was more of a presence and curiosity that held what is right up and help define that, not in a selfish what's right for me, but in a how can I make sure that what I'm doing and contributing to the world impacts others. So that practicing curiosity is huge. And then also trying to keep the space between the stimulus and the response. We did a really good job of that for a lot of years. Like I grew up on stories about how that happened and then got to live in a society where that was happening. It was like the stimulus would come in, but the response would be overwhelmingly, no, that's not who we are as a people, as a nation. And we've lost that. There's a wedge between doing what's right and what we're living in right now.
Yeah. I purposely waited to bring Kylie last because Kylie not only has a global organization with employees in the US, Canada, and Australia, but she's gotten the chance to live in the United States and now in Australia. She's from Australia. And I'm just curious, not only from a global aspect, what you've seen, and then what you've noticed as well from the United States and Australia.
Really different. Lots of similarities, but lots of differences. And I think when we think about human rights progress, I don't think human rights progress is permanent. I think every generation inherits, different versions of human rights. I hate to say it, I might be the youngest one here. I'm a 1980s baby. So I sort of look back, I feel like I may be a 1940s baby today, a little tired. But so I look back sort of, when my mum, parents were born and other people that I know, and think, wow, the 1960s and 70s were really those decades and those generations that really seem to stand up for human rights and what we believe in, probably a little more loudly than what I have seen here in Australia particularly. But I think when we think about, are we turning back the clock and are we continuing to make progress, or are we sort of regressing a little? My response to that would be, in some respects, yes. I've been home from the States. It's 2 years this week, which is crazy to me. And although I say yes in some respects, the picture for me is not entirely one of regression. And you know, you've all been talking about the extraordinary progress that's been made when we think about human rights over the last however many decades. But there's also, and I hate to sort of be the bearer of bad news or sort of playing devil's advocate here, but there's also real clear warning signs that rights and democratic institutions and also the rule of law can't be taken for granted. And some of those warning signals, I don't think I need to tell anyone who's residing in the United States at the moment what those are. Like I said, I relocated back home to Sydney, Australia 2 years ago. So my daughter and I haven't been there for probably some of that disruption and a lot of that change when you think about human rights. What's been refreshing for me coming home as an Australian is that we're not perfect and we don't do everything perfectly, but Chasen and I particularly have had a lot of conversations about the focus that we have as Australians and also our federal government and our state governments on the human rights and upholding the human rights of, for instance, people with disability and also our First Nations and Indigenous Australians as well. So when I think about progress versus regression when it comes to human rights, I really want to avoid presenting history as that inevitable march backwards, because I think there are countries that are making progress and institutions that are resisting erosion and communities that are organising. And I think Americans do that so beautifully. And I continue to see that in the organisations I'm still a part of that are based in the States. And I tell my Australian friends how well Americans come together as community. But I think the trajectory for human rights is contested. And I don't think we're simply watching the clock turn backwards. We're deciding at the moment in this point in time, particularly in the States, which direction it moves. And I think when we're thinking about particular groups of human beings, women's rights really illustrate that tension particularly clearly, that powerful example of progress versus regression. So two things I think can be true at the same time.
I think it's really interesting being in HR, which I fell into, which a lot of people fell into HR, but falling into HR, being a chef, being in the culinary industry, being in the service industry, and then falling into HR because I was the guy that they thought was friendly and like, hey, you can teach other people. Hello, Reagan. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everybody that's out there. Jackie, Felipe, Stacy, Jody, Nick. Have I missed anybody? I'm looking at Jihan.
G.
Thank you, Leslie. Yeah. So thank you, everybody that is here that's commenting. And if you have a question, please put it in the chat. I'll do my best to get it up for everyone. One of the things that I've noticed over time is that we have a lot of, especially in the States, is that we have a lot of governmental agencies that are here to protect us and create that environment where we feel safe. And my question is, how effective are they? Because we don't give them the tools necessary to do the work. And I have a personal example that I was helping my wife, and we had to go to the EEOC. For those of you in the United States, especially those of you that have worked in some leadership capacity, you know what the EEOC is. For those of you that don't, that is about equal opportunity rights within companies. So it's really built to help employees, but it is not biased one way or the other. It is really supposed to be an intermediary that's going to get to the bottom of whether there was a problem or not. I presented a problem for my wife that she was experiencing. We gave them all the information, all the emails, all of the documents that they needed. We were assigned a case. We had a caseworker. We had things that went on. They went to the company and they asked for a response. Back and forth, this went on over a year. Now you think about this. This went on for over a year before we just got to a stalemate and Jody just went on to working for a different company. The point of this is, if we are developing rights and the infrastructure for organizations to help us maintain those rights and maintain our ability to protect people, especially people that are in marginalized communities or in communities that traditionally are not, that need more protections, we need to be able to have these organizations that can stand up, have all the tools necessary, have the personnel necessary, and have the funding necessary in order to effectively help those that need it. Because you shouldn't have to wait a year to get to the bottom line of, hey, I experienced this abuse. Here's all of the documentation, and let's get to at least some mediation to take care of this problem. And that's the thing that, even though I see a lot of great work that we've done in the past, that's one of the biggest frustrations that I have with what we do, is that the people that are trying to do this work are way underfunded, outmanned, they are undermanned. They don't have the infrastructure, and a lot of their tools and resources are outdated. So in the structure of this conversation, without being Debbie Downer, what I would love to do is have our personal experiences come out, and any questions that you might have in the audience talk about as well. But also, how do we make sure that everything that's been put into place since the 60s and beyond is now actually working the way it's supposed to help us as citizens, wherever we are? So I'm going to actually go backwards. I'm going to start with Dr. Anne Marie Risto, or excuse me, I'm going to start with Kylie, and then we'll run back through.
What you just described to me, Jason, the reason I was nodding, and you know why I was nodding, is because the I guess human rights at work and dignity at work is an area that's particularly close to the work that I do and that my team does, particularly with people from that are sort of more disadvantaged or at work or need different supports or adjustments. So people with disability, but also people from culturally diverse backgrounds. I think, and again, there's this distinction in my mind as I'm speaking between the workplace rights and protections as it pertains to Australian federal law, and then those in also Canada and the United States. Canada's workplace protections are much more closely aligned to those that we have in Australia. They're not identical, but they are much more similar than, I guess, a lot of the work that we continue to do in the States, particularly when it comes to dignity at work, human rights at work, and also psychological and psychosocial safety at work. I'm always really careful about saying that psychological and psychosocial safety itself is a standalone universal human right, because that really overstates the law. But I think that safe and healthy working conditions are definitely recognised internationally as a fundamental right at work. And we know that psychologically and psychosocially safe cultures are such a critical and important mechanism for enabling, dignity at work, participation, voice, prevention of harm, which is what your story demonstrates, but also an effective exercise of workplace rights. What you were describing, that I'm not saying it wouldn't happen here in Australia, but it would be something that would be a very slim chance of occurring, because we have a federally funded Fair Work Commission the Fair Work Commission of Australia, and a commissioner that oversees all of those workplace rights and protections, so that someone who was in Jodie's situation that presents to them or lodges a complaint, it's investigated, there's a tribunal hearing, there's mediation prior to that. There is a legal process and framework that protects, or is supposed to protect, workers when it comes to any type of workplace harm, abuse, or psychological or other injury in the workplace. So I think this is a highly relevant conversation, because we know that we spend so much of our time at work, and in my work I see this rising incidence globally of psychological abuse and psychological injuries, and what that does to the human spirit, but also to human beings and their families and their communities. So
I was gonna say, I know you've got your own court system in
Yes.
Australia. So it's more of an anomaly for someone to have to go through what Jodie experienced, for example. That would be an anomaly, not a regular occurrence. Where I think that we've got some work to do in the United States in order to get funding, more manpower, and better resources and tools to the agencies that are meant to protect us.
Yeah, and I mean, part of the work that I've been doing for the last 3 years with a wonderful American-based or US-based nonprofit called End Workplace Abuse, Jason, you're familiar with them and their work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is to have the very first Workplace Psychological Safety Act implemented in all states and districts in the United States. And I know that it's now an act and legislation in Hawaii, in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, but we're still fighting for that. And that's been going on for over 4 to 5 years, I think, those conversations. The evidence from victims has been overwhelming, and the hearings have taken place in, over, I think, 10 to 15 states, maybe more. So the fact there's no act or legislation that holds employers, leaders accountable, and protects and recognises the workplace protections and rights of workers, I think that's the very first step, is recognising there's no legal framework that exists right now as it pertains to things like psychological and psychosocial safety.
Dr. Risto, bringing you on now, and the same kind of idea that we were just talking about is, what do we need to do in order to make sure that all the work that we've done is actually protected, and that we don't go backwards, that we actually have organizations and people and court systems in place to protect those that we are supposed to serve.
Yeah, and so Kylie was talking about that psychological silencing or abuse, and we're playing it out live here in America with, if you just think about 1973, that's when we had the Rehabilitation Act, and that's when we started seeing the movement of treating people with disabilities with dignity, and really starting to have an open society as it should have been. We just didn't know any better to do so. And then you fast forward to, I believe it was President Bush, so it's not a political Democrat or Republican thing, who then brought in the Americans with Disability Act in the 2008, I think it was, and broadened the it was earlier than that. It was 1990. And then in 2008, it was the broadening of the definitions of disability, because we were able to be educated and informed. But now what's happening is we've removed the platform, if you will, or the foundation of having it be an educational support, and moved it into health sciences, so that we can return to that idea of, if you have a disability, there's a stigma attached to that. And so we have a lot of work to do just on the vocabulary, and just to return to where our new baseline was with the movement that we were making from thinking about having our spaces be accessible, right? Like in the 70s, if you visualize that, that is when we started having ramps put onto buildings so that people who used a wheelchair needed, were able to access the spaces that they needed. Curb cuts, visual impairments, we started having like changing of the foundation so that it would go from a grid to a dotted space so that they could know how to get to the train safely. And then we started progressing so much into our definition of diversity and what our country was founded on with diversity, to the point that people became fearful of it. And so now, in organizations like I work in, you're not allowed to even have that word in descriptions or in outcomes. And because people are afraid of it. And so we have a lot of work to do with that forward thinking of what can we do now, because we're not going to stay in this place. I believe in us as a country, and I know that we're going to have those people that come with the curiosity and the presence and stand forward. And the work that needs to be done is just not only reminding people of the positive impacts that all of society has gained just from focusing on treating people humanely, that we now need to bring the definitions forward and say, like, how is this a make wrong? When we think about diversity and looking at our differences and our similarities, and we don't have to all be the same. That's how we've had such great things come about in our country, and we're losing that. And as we lose that, out of sheer survival of being knocked down from our position as one of the great countries, or the greatest country, many would have said, there's not a lot of people saying that anymore, right? They're really questioning what we're doing. And there's a we that haven't used their voices. And so using our voices, bringing those definitions back to the conversation and saying, this is a healthy thing for our society, and this is our society. And you can tell someone to ignore something or to not use certain vernacular, but then it doesn't mean that people have to do it, right? We can still live it and behave in a way where we're respectful of, and it not only, I hate the word acknowledging, because it means that you have to like bring something forward. It is what we're going to be known for. We're going to return to this society at that global capacity of we're known for and stand out for, because the people that bring that rich diversity to our country are doing such incredible things that we're not going to be able to hide it or shame it. So working on that vocabulary, working on those actions, and really not staying silent. You mentioned the equity edits, and one of the findings that I had in that research was people were silent because they didn't know what to say. Well, we need to help them now. That's our action. We need to help people know what to say so that the silence isn't found as conformity.
Oh, that's powerful. I'm going to bring Desiree up next, and we're still answering the same question, but I also want to tag this on. Felipe, I'm going to show this question. Felipe asked this question in the audience, so you've got two questions to answer, Desiree. Yeah. I'm going to leave that up there.
My first answer is back to your question, Jason, originally, and I always talk about the money when it comes to these type of things, because the States capitalism wasn't built to support truly people. It was built to support industry, right? And if we think about how capitalism works, it's always so focused on profit over people. And there are so many of us that have been saying that's wrong for so long. And so we don't give the money and the funding to the right places to be able to do the work we need to be able to do to provide the resources and the psychological safety and the all the things within an organization, because we're so focused on the profit of how business is run. And it's sad to watch. I've worked on the revenue side of a business and on the people side of a business throughout my career. And I'm going to tell you, I was much more loved when I was in sales and marketing than I was on the human resources and talent side. And that is because we're so focused on the profit, and we're so focused on the money and all the things we can buy and all of these other pieces to the puzzle, that we really push down what is important for humans. Now we're in the world of HI. Let's add on another piece of this where we keep losing the human part of things, and we need to bring that back up. And so I constantly talk about keeping humans at the top of every thought process. And I think we need to consistently be doing that and pushing our lawmakers to put people first and doing those fundamental things. I agree. Silence right now is the worst thing we can be doing. It's not helping us, that it's almost like we're bowing down and I said this in the beginning, that it's diminished so many voices. And I want to hear more from them. We need to speak up more. I was on LinkedIn today. I'm like, I just want more people yelling at people about the way things are right now. And that's sad, but I love that stuff because I think it challenges people to think differently. And the more that we do that, the more that we, start looking inwards and then saying, like, this is what I believe. These are the values. People matter. And putting that in front of people, the more they're going to start to listen. I think it's what happened somewhat in the 60s. Like Dr. Anne Marie said, they were standing on those boxes and screaming it from the top of the hills that, this was what they needed. And I think in the States, and, I could make a political, but I think this is just a general fact and rule throughout time, that we have said that the less important thing is to put the money where the people are. We're going to put it in weapons, or we're going to put it in something else, and that we need to change that trajectory, or we're just going to end up in this same cycle. And I really hate it for us. And I agree, it's that do better people thing. If you can just do a little bit better each day and chisel away at something, I think that's important, and put the money where it's supposed to be. I have a whole thing. That's a whole nother show, Felipe. I love you, but I'm not going to take up all of the time with the answer to that question, because I mean, I think in general, people would know how I feel, right, about this. I think what is happening to employers and what they're being asked to do, and to drift away from so much that they actually value and believe in order to pay less on their taxes, to do all of these other things, is just unreal. I've seen some unreal things happening right now. Startups, how startups get money, and it's just, it's abysmal right now. And the more we speak up about the things that are changing and the things that are affecting the people within our organizations, I have a whole thing about silence, and silence is inaction, and inaction means we don't move forward. And please speak up, right? We need to do that. But it does, in the States, a lot of it is money and revenue driven. And I hate it.
Tiffany, all the way back to where we started, and bringing you in, obviously 2 questions going on. I love the Desiree's like, I'm not going. Like, it is. It's entirely another show, and I appreciate it though, Felipe. I mean, Felipe, spent a lot of time in human resources. I mean, this guy, I love him dearly as well, and I love his shows. I love how he shows up for other people, but I love his questions. Brilliant guy doing some really cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, and we have a limited amount of time. Other people are going to start to go to sleep. But I do want to address this, and I also want you to weave in, because you've got some personal stories, Tiffany, and I don't want to undermine that. And you've got some things going on and that you've experienced recently that really weave into this entire conversation. So I want to get you the platform to do so.
I love that. Thank you, my dear friend and partner. This conversation sits inspirational. It also sits heavy. We've had some stuff locally. One of the things, and I know it's always a hot topic, but here locally in the Madison area, we recently had a young man who lost his life after an encounter with with law enforcement. And when I look at even Nick's comment, where did it go? About using our voices without fear of repercussions, right? Like, what are the tools and the systems in society that help us be better? What do we expect, and what do we deserve out of community, which is our basic human rights? And everyone deserves that, right? It doesn't matter where you sit on any continuum, politically or any of that. We all deserve the right to live, to have housing, to have food, to have experiences that don't rob us of our very humanity, that we feel like we're not seen, or society. And I'll tell you, it's happened to me, and this sits heavy with me. The last month alone, it's been a bit of a social experiment to just watch how certain people can move through the world, whether that's because of their gender, whether it's because they're, able-bodied, whether it's because it's a white man versus myself, and the interactions of, let's see how long it takes for me to get served. Let's watch how, even maybe sometimes walking down the street, let's see, if they are, because I'm in an interracial marriage, let's see if they look at my husband first. Let's see if they address him first. It is constantly an experiment of our basic human rights just to live. And some of us are experiencing that differently. So in thinking about the fact that I live near our capital, not particularly where I live, but our office is very near there, and thinking about the university and students, and what is our responsibility as generations. Today happens to be my late grandfather's birthday. We just lost him in February, so we're feeling the weight of that. What I also feel, from an emotional perspective, is what he gifted our family, and what I get to live on in legacy through the stories he's told me, through him growing up he was born in, I should know this, 1929, but a long time ago, right? And things have shifted back to how you asked that even before. What does that look like? And I have responsibilities as a leader, as a business owner. It was also Nick who brought up the conversation about small organizations versus large organizations. There's a reason I chose to work with small to medium, no shade to our big corporate. But there is a difference in the resources and how people, what responsibilities we have, the courage that leaders, can bring forward, or do we shrink? There are just so many big questions in this world. And Dr. Anne-Marie talks about curiosity. It's one of my favorite things. When we look at our human rights, it has to start with questions. It has to start with, what does the community need? Even when you do service, you don't do service at people. It's, what do they need, right? And so I think about these are all just big questions that I'm sure weigh very heavy for a lot of us, but it's our responsibility. It's what we can gift each other. I look at situations such as COVID, where CEPHR was born, that helped us thrive in a lot of ways because we were able to make that level of impact. And yet, people are losing folks. What does that look like from a workplace policy? Are we having people come in? Are we keeping them safe? Kylie talked about that earlier. And these psychosocial hazards, we have a responsibility to let people know that they care, just like we wouldn't let them trip over some cord that we leave in the middle of the floor. We have a responsibility to care for them and their mental health. And it's not something we want to be stigmatized. And yet it is, right? I think about our very human responsibility to each other, and how people can't even sometimes look at each other and smile when you're walking down the street. And if you're someone like me, it's like, oh, is it because I'm Black? What is it? I shouldn't have to question that. We need to do better. And I guess I'll just leave it there.
No, I want to take the last part of the conversation and we'll stay with you, Tiffany, and then I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I want to stay with you, and the last part of the conversation is, what would you like to see? Like, what can we do now? So we've talked about doing better. We've talked about a little bit about what we've done in the past and the things that we built, but maybe those systems that we built, we're not funding, or we're not giving them all the tools and resources they need in order to do what they were commissioned to do. And so what can we do now? What do you envision? What would you like to see us do now in the future, in 2026 and beyond, in order to grow and in a positive way?
I love that question, Jason. And honestly, I do think it comes down to community. People, anyone who follows my work or knows me as a person, it knows that this spirit of community, my dad was very, very much into that. And so I feel him living through me right now, as well as my grandfather. I've lost both of them, but I've gained so much perspective, and I've gained so many just great values from that. I think coming through some shared values, we talk about that at work for a reason. If we are going to live under shared values, it means we're all committing to that. We're signing up for it. The behaviors behind that look a certain way, which means we have better workplaces, we have better quality of life. And our communities are safer for all of us. And I'm not just talking like where you live and geographically and any of that, because that's a whole nother weaponized something I'm not going to get into. But thinking about, what is our shared responsibility? If you've followed my work for a while, we talk about that a lot too. This shared responsibility, because breaking that up is not healthy. It's the reason why silos are bad in an organization, right? Looking at what we can bring together versus what is different about us. And I think everybody here today, with this leading from the front crew, can agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Same question. And Dr. Anne-Marie Risto, taking us back to, what do you want to see now and moving forward so that we move in a positive direction?
Yeah, it's interesting because Nicole had put in the chat about well, how can we use our voices without fear of repercussions? And are there organizations to teach us how to advocate for our rights and that are within the rules of the law, as the laws are changing pretty rapidly in our country? And so for me, it's about growing your knowledge and then acting on it. So to answer your question, Nicole, yeah, I actually pulled up my other laptop real quick. And it's about 3 years ago, I did a human rights certification training through it was through the U.S. Institute of Diplomacy and Human Rights, and it offered all of these exposures to the history of human rights across our country, but also ways you can advocate and stand up for what you believe in without, maybe you're not going to be Martin Luther King taking people across the bridge, or maybe you're not going to be that, but it's each small step. So if we grow our knowledge and find different ways, I looked for different certification areas in my field, in my profession, and went in and did trainings on becoming more humane in the workplace and leading for equity and diversity and inclusion. So think about a small step of how you can become more knowledgeable and take what you're learning, not just for yourself, but spread it. And even if you do so in little ways, it will make huge differences.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We've had a bunch of questions pop up. We're not going to be able to address them all, but as you guys go through the comments later on, Teresa asked a great question about governance within board of directors and mentioning trauma-informed care embedded into board of directors. And then Reagan has a couple of great questions as well. I'm going to pull up Desiree now. And Desiree, same thing. What are we hopeful for now and in the future to see positive change?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the brilliant young ladies before me. The community and knowledge are so important. I always believe that if I give people small steps, they can achieve more because they're more willing to take that small step, right? And so those things like community and knowledge and all of those things are so important. And also just doing something and not doing nothing, right? We have a ton of people in this country that don't even have basic human rights. We have a ton of people in this country living on the street without food to eat. If you've gone to the grocery store, I don't know how anybody feeds a family right now. It's so expensive. So I want people to really think about the community around them. If that's your local community, if that's, bigger than that, how can you support, get involved in some way? Give $5 for that Starbucks coffee. I really just want you to do the small thing today because that small thing does matter. And those small things, add up. If all of us gave $5, right, that would be fantastic in the world. And I don't think we think about others as much around us. In Austin, we have a huge homeless problem. And until I leave my house, which is not often, I do. When I do leave my house and I see that, I'm like, oh yeah, I should go do this thing, or go to the help at the food bank or do it. But when you see those things, do something about them. Don't do nothing. It's really easy to walk by and just, that's not me. Let's not do that anymore. Let's really focus on what we can do, even if it's something small today. And also, my last thing in this, I talk about this and write about this all the time. Please take a minute and pause and look within and see and understand your own values and those values that you want and believe in so much. Put those things out into the world, support organizations that are doing them, that have the same values, and try to move the needle forward. I think a lot of people don't even sit with that for a minute. And we're moving so fast all the time. We need to take a moment to breathe and think about what those are and how we can support. So take those minutes, take that breath, and then go out into the world and support the organizations or start something yourself, and really, really help those in need and even those who are trying to do this work. So I love that. Great question. I could go on forever.
I love that as well. I'm here today and I'm having this conversation because someone paid it forward to me. And so I am very acutely aware of what we can do as a society and a people and what that looks like over time when we care about the people around us and we care about the community and we pay it forward to other people. That is an incredible response. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Someone just deciding that they weren't going to fire me and they were going to stand up for me and make a few phone calls made the difference and saved my life. That is what may seem small to you or someone else, but it changed my life. And it's the reason I have a 30-year chip of being clean. So I love all of this. I purposely wanted to end here with Kylie, but coming from a global aspect and living in different places, but also seeing it as an executive for a global organization. What do you want to see not only in the United States, but in Canada, in Australia, and the other places that you work and that you support? What do you want to see?
I want to see behavior change, essentially. But that never happens until there's awareness first, right? And when we think about behavior change and all the things we've been talking about this morning, it starts with awareness. It starts with one person or a collective desire to change, to do that, to actually execute change and action change, which is what we're talking about this morning. So we know that talking about it and raising awareness like we're doing this morning and in the chat as well is the first step. But people have to have the desire to change. They also have to have the knowledge on how to actually put that desire, that awareness, that knowledge into action. And only then do we see behavioural change and behavioural shift. That's what ideally I would like to see globally. I'm asked all the time, I'm doing a lot of work in Australia at the moment, and also in the States when it comes to disability employment in particular, and people's workplace rights when it comes to disability and employment. And I'm always asked if I'm optimistic, because I'm naturally a glass half full kind of gal. And my answer would be I'm realistic, but I'm really hopeful. I can't be anything but that, because I have an 18-year-old daughter, and I'm hopeful that her generation and the generations to follow will continue this conversation, but more importantly, they will start taking action. And I think, human history demonstrates that enormous change is possible, even if it seems so difficult, in the seats and the countries that we sit in at the moment. And human rights in particular sounds enormous because we associate them with the UN, right? And governments and courts and legislation and human rights laws and frameworks. But as everybody here has said today, human rights are lived locally. And a big thing that I always say in my work is there's a real power in recognising and considering lived experience. And it goes back to what Desiree and Tiffany and Dr. Anne was all saying is, if you see it, take action. We can't just keep talking about what's wrong. We actually have to be a part of the solution. We need to pay attention to whose voice is missing. We need to challenge dehumanising language, not just in the workplace, but in community. We need to speak up when somebody's being treated unfairly. We need to learn our rights. And I do a lot of work with women, migrant women in particular, and refugee women who have no idea about their workplace rights. And we need to also support people who exercise those rights, because we can't expect people to use their voice when there's no trust or safety. And from my friends and colleagues and people I consider family in the US, vote. Here in Australia, voting is mandatory. I'm sure when it comes around again in the States, a lot of people will turn out to vote and exercise their voice in that way. But I would implore everybody to make sure that if you have the right to do so, and use your voice, then do that in whatever way in your community, in your workplace, that you think that it's going to be powerful. Because I think we really underestimate the influence of everyday actions and things like everyday leadership. But as we've all seen through history, ideas that were once dismissed as radical or too out there have become fundamental legal principles. So nothing is impossible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I am super excited that we had this. Man, this hour has flown by. Holy cow. This hour has just flown by. I have missed you ladies. This has been an awesome, awesome conversation. I want to thank everybody that showed up, even those that may not have commented, but are seeing us on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. Thank you for being part of the conversation, and thank you for watching this. This is a quarterly show that we get together and we decide on a topic, and we hit it head on, and we don't make it political, but we do make it about human beings. And I'm excited to stand with these ladies, these powerful ladies. I've said this so much in my life that I am acutely aware that a guy that came from abuse and didn't really have that maternal instinct and have the people in his life that affected him. I'm surrounded by the most powerful women in the universe now. And I'm so honored to have these ladies that they're the only ones that can tell me what to do. Is these powerful women that surround me. And I'm excited and I'm honored. And we're so grateful that you're here and that you're part of the conversation and that you're learning, because we can't be silent. We've got to speak up, and we've got to care about other people. We've got to look for those opportunities to pay it forward, to give a darn about the persons to our left and our right, and ask the questions, to lead with curiosity. I believe that we can. I believe that we as a country, as a nation, as a community, as a global community, can do better and can really make a difference in 2026 and beyond. Thank you for being a part of this. We'll see you next time. Make sure that you follow all these brilliant ladies and that you share in the comments your thoughts, and we'll see you out there in the universe. Thank you so much. Take care.